Hi, my name is Joshua, and in this video we're going to talk about how to create a custom navbar in Payload. So what you're seeing here is actually a completely custom navbar that has all the functionality that the normal navbar from Payload also brings, with added benefits. First, we can now style this navbar with Tailwind CSS. Then we have icons. And also it looks ordinary, but we can inject our own links now right into nav groups, and we can inject whole nav groups that we can change. So this is a nav group where I want to save useful links for user or for whatever reason. So I created a link list in a global, and I can edit this and it will automatically edit useful link. It will automatically edit it here as well. Let's reload the page. Okay, useful link. Now, how are we going to do this? We are going to start with a very simple payload project. This is based on the previous payload projects that we implemented, and you can easily follow Sandor's tutorial. In this payload project, we also implemented Tailwind CSS, so I would highly recommend you implementing it because we're going to style the sidebar with it. And we added some collections. It doesn't really matter what collections you use here, as long as they have some groups. In this case, we have a blog group with articles, categories, comments. We have a CRM group with customers. We have media also for the blog group, users for an admin group. Then we have some custom views. We have an export view, overview, view, a config global. Here we save the link list and a dashboard. This is also from a previous tutorial. We add this all to our payload config, and then the base project should look something like this. Now, how are we going to start? First, we need to copy the actual code from the payload repository for the navbar, and then we're going to modify this. You're going to find the code for the navbar in the payload repository. So you go on GitHub, payload, then you go to packages. In packages, you're going to find, oh, I'm in the way. You are going to find payload. In payload, we're going to find a source folder. In source folder, we have an admin folder. In admin, we have components. In components, we have elements. And in elements, we finally have the elements that we actually need. First of all, here we have the nav. We are going to copy this, the index tsx. Just copy it. And back in our project, we are going to I created a components folder. We're going to create a new folder, a nav, and we're going to start by creating a new file, nav.jsx. I personally prefer JavaScript over TypeScript, so I'm going to use to remove the TypeScript references, but you can of course keep them and keep on working with TypeScript. That is no problem at all. Now let me remove the TypeScript here, and do we have something missing? Yes, also this complete thing here we don't need because it extends the payload config by default, but we don't need that. We also have these strings. Then we need to export this. I'm going to export this export default function nav, because this is a navbar. Here still we have the group. Now this should work for now, and we need to import it into our payload config. For that, we need to go into admin, components, and in our components, we can directly, before views, inject our own nav panel by stating nav colon nav. Now we need to import it here. Yes, perfect. And don't forget the comma. Now we injected our own nav panel, but you see we're going to get a lot of error messages because we need to adjust a lot of this code. First, we have the imports. We can remove the imports that we don't need anymore. We don't need the render custom function, but these imports we all need to rework. You can also remove the import CSS. Then we need to implement also later the nav group, and we also need to implement the hamburger, so we're going to put them separate. Now we're left with config use of chevron entity type group nav items get translations, and we need to import them. We're going to get them from the payload npm package, and I prepared this. I'm simply going to copy paste it in here. So here we have useNav, which is imported from payload components elements. You can remove this. Then we have the logout, which is imported from payload dist admin components elements logout. Then we have the useAuth and the useConfig, which is also imported from payload components / utilities. Now we can delete these two. Then we have the chevron, which is imported from payload components / icons. By the way, this is probably not going to work with payload 3.0. When there is a stable version of payload 3.0, we have to rework this tutorial, at least the imports. Then we have entity type and group nav items. Oh, did I get translations? We also need to remove this because we get the translations from payload dist / util / get translations. Now we're left with the entity type and group nav items. The best way to import these I found is to manually import the entity type. I also prepared this, so let me paste it here really quick. With the entity type of collection and global, so we don't need that. The group nav items function I also found the easiest to simply copy paste it into our own project from payload. For that you need to go to payload packages, payload src, admin utils, group nav items, and here you have this function. We're going to copy it as a whole. Let's copy it, and we're going to paste it here. I'm going to remove the types again. Group. Oops. Now we can remove this import as well, and with that, we should have managed to get most of the all of the imports. Next point, we need to implement hamburger and nav group. We could also import the hamburger, but we want full control, so we're going to get the hamburger implemented ourselves or copy it, and then we have control. So next we're going to add the hamburger. It's very easy. hamburger.jsx. We're going to go back on GitHub. Within the same directory where the nav folder is, there's also the hamburger. A few folders up. So we simply copy paste this. Copy paste. And now here we need to adjust some of the imports as well. Oh, let me change this. We can remove the index.css, and the chevron we also need to get from the same place as here. So we're going to copy paste this as well. Chevron, remove it. And now we have the hamburger. Does this export const? Yes, that does work. Now we need the nav group. We're going to create a file, new file, nav group, JSX, and we're going to copy it as well. Here we have one folder down the nav group. Simply go into it, going to copy the whole thing, navprod, paste. Here we have similar problems. Let me remove the types again. Okay, here we have similar problems with the imports. Let's get rid of index CSS. We have use nav, which is the same as here, so we can copy it. Use nav. Then we have preferences. Preferences we're going to get from payload component / preferences. And then we have again the chevron that we can copy from the same place. Okay, for you it's probably going to give an error message, but you also need to install animate height from React with npm install react -animate -height. And then we have done this so far. Now let's see what error messages we still get. Cannot find module nav group. Yes, of course. We have not imported it yet correctly. Let's see if we still get any error message. Okay, now it seems to work. That means if we go into our payload project, we have a normal navbar, but it is now our navbar. It's our own navbar. By the way, please don't be irritated by the blue chevron. I missed a CSS statement while I was removing the already done code. The CSS statement is simply in the Tailwind CSS. It is this one with which we're going to define the color of the chevron icon, because it's defined by the stroke and it is currently, as far as I know, not possible with Tailwind. But if you know something else, please post it in the comments. Now, we have imported successfully our own navbar. The first thing we now want to do is to add icons to it. How do we do that? If you haven't installed it already, please install React Icons, but you could use any icon library for that. As far as this goes, it does not really matter. The important thing is that we have these nav groups, and the nav groups have a label. This is, you can see it here. If you go through the code, you have the groups, which are grouped by the labels or by collections and globals by default. And they are going to create these nav groups. And the nav group itself takes a key and the label is the name we set for a group in our collection config. And we can intercept this and say, oh, hey, if we see this label, then I want to inject my own icon. We can do this in the nav group class itself. This is maybe not the best method, but I found it to work reliably, and yeah, why not use it? Now, to inject our own labels, we need to create a dictionary. For this, we use const icon dictionary equals, and then we use as the keys our group names, for example, CRM. And then we import an icon. In this case, I want to use hi user group. For the link, yes, we're also going to add a links group later on, but we can define its icon right here as well. I'm going to use link for that. Then we have the block group, block, which is pencil. Yes, let's use that. Then we have the admin group, which uses the hi cog icon. Okay, what I also would like to add is we need to define the size here. So let's add a class name, and I'm going to use Tailwind CSS. So width is going to be 6 and height is going to be 6, but you can change this to whatever you want. And of course, we need to import all the icons. I'm not entirely sure if they're all imported from Here Icons 1 or Here Icons 2. I prepared something. Let's simply try it. We imported from React Icons, HI link pencil. Let's see if this works or if it needs to be imported from somewhere else. Okay, does not seem to give an error right now. Now, the next thing is, and this is actually very, very simple. Here we have the elements that are going to be displayed at the top of the group. Here we have the content of the group with the animate height, and here's the chevron, and here's the label of the group. And in front of the label, we want to add our icon. We're going to add a custom div with icon dictionary, and this is gonna take in the label, and it's then going to return the icon. So if we save this now and we go back to our backend, then we have the icons here. Now this does not really look like intended, and I would like to modify the look of the group header a little bit so it's larger and easier to differentiate between the links and the headers for that. And also we want to get rid of this space. First, what we're going to do is we're going to add the following classes in the button. It's going to be flex row items center gap 2. Then here in the label, we're going to set it on text XL and flex 1. Also, I want it to be text cyan 500, and also the icon class name text cyan 500. Now let's see what happened. Perfect. And we have our custom styled group, nav groups with headers. Now, the next problem I want to solve is that Payload by itself gives you the option to insert something in front of the nav links or after the nav links, but they are itself not part of groups. So if you want to add links that are part of the group, you need to inject your own nav group. And for this, we have defined the config here with the link list, but you could inject any kind of link. We're going to go through this also in more detail. But yeah, for now, we want to show these links as a separate nav group below the other nav groups. This is also fairly easy. We need to go into the nav. And here you see you have all the individual elements that make up the navbar. You have the before links, you have the groups, you have the after nav links and the logout button. And between the after nav links and the groups, we want to inject our own navbar. First of all, we need to get our config or our config global. For that, we define a state const global config, comma set global config. It is an I want to set it as null for now. Then we have use effect, which is going to fetch global config. Yes, which is correct. And then we're simply going to fetch it. This is not completely correct. API globals config, set it to the global config. Close this. and add, wait. Yes, this should work now. Let's format this nicely and adjust the spaces. Okay, and of course we need to fetch global config. Fetch global config. I mean, it would be nicer with error handling, but for now, I trust you that you know how to do that. Now we have the global configs and we have this group. Let's minimize that and we're going to add another one. If we have global configs, then we're going to create a new group. For that we need to open this again. We're basically going to copy this nav group in here. We can remove the content. Actually, we can remove most of the stuff. The only thing we need is the label. We also copied a nav link. Let's write it ourselves. Nav group. We have the label, which is going to be links. As you remember, we already configured an icon for this. And then in this nav group, you can inject whatever. So if I have this links nav group, I say blah, blah, blah. I save it. And we go back here. We have there's something wrong. Label. No, how is label spelled? Label. Okay, this is how it's supposed to be. Yes, we have links and blah blah blah, but there's still the icon missing. Where is the icon? Nav group. I spelled it with a capital L. Let's go back to nav. Then links. Okay, now this is how it's supposed to be. You have links, you have blah blah blah. You can put in here whatever, it does not matter. But we won't put our links in here. For that, we're gonna define a div. Class name equals flex call. And within this, we're going to iterate our array. Global config dot link list dot map. This looks all right. Yeah. And this returns an A tag because it's going to direct people outside of our page. Class name. Let's simply add href link.href and key equal, we put equal to link.id. Target is going to be blank. And yeah, that's enough. And then the label is going to be link.label. Now we go back to our page. Let's see what happens. Useful link, Google, perfect. Now, the last point we're going to do is we now injected our own nav group, but we also want to inject our own links in existing nav groups because we have customers, for example, and we want a separate view that exports to customers. And it really makes sense to have this link right here in the CRM group, because otherwise you would have to add it before nav or after nav or link to it on the dashboard, which would also not really make sense. We want it here. How do we do that? Now, to do that, let me find my mouse. We need to go into nav, and now we want, within these groups, want to inject our links. For that, we're also going to define a dictionary. let's put it also at the top. Const inject nav links equals, and here we need to specify the name of the group again, and then we're gonna put an array, and here we're going to put all the links that we want to inject into this group. Each link is going to need a label, for example export, and a to, which is admin customers.export. We also want, you saw that we have this overview view, we want to add this to admin, so we're going to specify this here, admin label overview to, and this is simply going to redirect to label overview. Now with these injected links, we're going to go into the group, because everything that is within nav group is part of this toggle up and down. And simply after or before, you have to make a decision if you want to the injected links before the other links or after. We are going to inject them after. We look if that label that we have here, because that's the group name, is in our dictionary, and if it is, we're going to iterate through the array in the dictionary and add the links. Now inject nav links label, perfect, that's already, and then we have inject nav links label dot map. You can take this, and we're going to return basically a normal link. We can copy, yes, here we can copy the link component. That's going to be faster. Remove, no, not remove this. The only thing we need to do here is put link.label. href is going to be link.to. Key is going to be, no, it should not be I. Okay, it's fine for now. ID we don't have. If we click on save and reload our page, then what we're going to see is, yes, we have new links. We have here this export view that we created, and with here, it's the wrong link, but does not really matter, the overview view in the admin. Okay, so that was it for this video. I hope this was useful for you, and see you the next time.